Welcome everyone to the Sheffield United Way. This is game week number 11 of our Premier League predictions competition. But of course, it wouldn't be a prediction show unless I was joined by my competitor, Jimmy the Blade. How are you doing, Jim?
Good, thank you, pal. How are you?
Good. Yes, not too bad. I was just complaining off screen that I am absolutely knackered today. But we power through. That's what we do here at the Sheffield United Way. Kinda, well, you can judge how well I power through by the end of the video. So last week was a close one. I just about eked out a victory, 8-7. So I'm continuing to claw back this chasm. But as you will see, it is still quite a chasm. You are still 6 points clear, despite the fact that I have won 3 weeks in a row. I am winning, but by nowhere near enough. And obviously, the viewers are well out in front. But how does that make you feel, Jim? How does it look being those 6 points clear?
It's good, mate. I can't say any other. It is good. And I did notice, I'll be honest, I don't always check to see how I've gone on because it's potluck with me, I'll be honest. There's no science behind it. We've talked about this before. I use the old eye test rather than in the figures and the stats, but I was following the results with a fine-tooth comb this week for some reason. I just felt like the need. Been beaten 2 weeks in a row, and you've picked me for a third week. But I think it was the Liverpool result that did it, because if they'd have scored an extra goal, I'd have got a perfect score. But with it being 2-0, you got the perfect score. I may be right or wrong with that, but yeah, Scouse has let me down, I think, from what I was saying.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I think they were. They're often it's one score which changes it one way or the other. I know the week before it was me getting a Spurs perfect, but you were 1 goal away from having it yourself. But of course, as you did see on that table there, the viewers are running away with it. And once again, the viewers destroyed us all this week again. Jim, Jack Atkin definitely deserves a shout out once again, not for the first time so far this season, but his 12-pointer was by far the winner this week. Do deserve honourable mentions to King Liam, who got 10, and to Joe Gibson for his 9 points. All 3 of those beat both of us. And so if you beat both of us, you probably deserve a shout out.
Not that it's a great achievement by any means, but well done for getting so many points.
Well done, but beating us is not that special. So let's get stuck into the games this week. And we start off with Manchester United. Walk me through why you think they'll actually win a game, Jim.
Fair point. I'm not a fan of Fulham, as probably a lot of people have picked up from the last 10 weeks. But Man United have got to turn a corner sooner or later. Ten Hag is the richer version of Eki, I would say, at the moment. He is on the brink and he needs a result. And I think they've got enough in the team to get a result. Well, everybody knows they have. And I think they'll do it. I think they'll go to Fulham and I think they'll nick something. And I think that'll buy him a little bit of time. But there's no real logic behind it. I just think they've got better players that if they play to their potential, they should be beating Fulham.
No, I think you're probably right. I think if Man U play at the level that we know they are probably capable of, they should win this game. But I just don't see where they get that level of performance from. I genuinely believe that Ten Hag's goose is completely and utterly cooked. And I think at or before the next international break, he will be a manager out of a job. I think it's interesting with Fulham, because I do think they're rubbish. I should mince my words a little bit, but I didn't. I do think that they are rubbish, if I'm being entirely honest. But I think they've obviously got one outstanding player who does stand out in João Palhinha. I think it was last weekend. They obviously drew, I think, at Brighton. And Palhinha actually broke the record for most successful tackles in a game. And I know that sounds, it's one of those stats where you think, oh, well, what does that mean? What it means is he's screening that defense so well. And he is actually genuinely contributing so much to what Fulham do. I expect him to leave in January. I know Bayern were chasing him all the way through the summer. I'm sure that somebody will come in for him. And so for me, for Fulham, they've got to get as many points as they can while he's still at the club. Because once he's gone, I do think that they are really in a mess.
Agree. He signed a new deal, didn't he? But it'll be one of those deals, I think, that's just bumped up his release clause and make sure Fulham are protected for when that time comes. So, yeah, he's a good player. And yeah, fair play to them for hanging on to him. But
Yeah.
like you say, I wouldn't be surprised to see him leave in January.
No, he's not going to stick around. With obviously the players they lost in the summer, I just can't see why he would stick around. I think you're right. I think they've probably boosted his release clause. I think he's been paid a bit more for 6 months, but I still expect that's not going to be enough to keep him around.
Will he get in for Ollie Norwood, though, if we sign him in January? João Palhinha?
It'd be a difficult one. He might have to sit on bench for a bit, work his way in.
Maybe. If Becky's still in charge.
I was going to say, then Norwood's definitely in. So, moving into next game of the weekend, Brentford against West Ham. Now, I was starting to think that everything had gone a bit stale at West Ham. I've been bemoaning their underlying data. They don't have fantastic goal XG4. They don't have, well, they actually have terrible XG against. And then they go and batter Arsenal in the Carabao Cup last night. And I just think there's something about West Ham that sets them up to get momentum going. I think they're that kind of team. I think this is actually quite a decent game. I think these are two pretty well-matched teams, to be honest, if I was trying to judge where they're going to finish. But I just think West Ham, particularly away from home, on the counter with players like Bowen getting in behind, can cause some real problems for Brentford. I think it's Pickham, but I think West Ham are potentially the more likely winner. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's a toss of a coin for me, this one. I were a little bit more confident before results last night, I'm not going to lie. So, I've been down on Brentford a little bit, and they continue to sort of prove me wrong. So this is a little bit me holding my hands up saying, fair play to you, Brentford. You're actually going okay. And, at home, I think I've just given the edge. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if West Ham got something out of it. I don't think they'll win, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they turn up and nick the point. But yeah, close game, but I think Brentford will just pip it.
To be honest, I fancy Wanderers for a perfect score here. I think this is 2-1 either way. I got in first and picked West Ham, but I think you were quite happy with that. So we'll see how it goes. But I think this is going to be one of them. One goal will swing it either way for either one of us. So next, a controversial pick from me that I'm sure you've not enjoyed. I think Burnley are going to beat Palace. And the reason for it is I'm looking at Palace and they are missing such key players in Eze and Elise in particular. And as you go back through some of their recent games, go back through their stats, they've only actually scored 3 in their last 7. They haven't scored more than once in a game since the 3rd of September. That to me just is a little bit alarm bells. Now, Burnley's defence, we talked about it when they were playing Bournemouth last week, is really not very good. They do give away chances. They do give away goals. But Palace, if you're going to try and play the way that Burnley do, I think Palace are a team that are really going to struggle to punish them without the players that they're missing. And so I think this is a chance for them to be getting on the front foot. When United played Palace first game of the season, I said you target that and you try and take 3 points. Burnley will be thinking exactly the same thing. And that kind of extra edge, I think, will just put them over the line to quite tight, quite squeaky win.
I can't disagree, to be honest. I mean, obviously, I've gone for a 1-1. I'd never let my head rule my heart.
Never.
Or heart rule my head, whatever it is. This is probably not the score I think might happen. I just can't bring myself to say Burnley are going to win. I think you're right. Palace are one of those that I don't think they'll quite be in relegation trouble, but it's certainly a game at home that a promoted side will look to win, because these are the games that'll, they're probably a better squad than Burnley, man for man. I know they've got a lot of injuries at the minute of Palace, but Burnley will see it as this is an opportunity for 3 points at home if we go for it. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if you were right on this one. It's just, I can't do it. I cannot do it. I can't bring myself to say that Burnley are going to get 3 points. Yeah.
You know what, though? I respect that, and I respect your conviction. And to be honest, I kind of hope you're right, because we could really do nobody else around us getting any bloody points.
Ollie, I have noted, since we started this, you have become a lot more open on what your true feelings are, and I like to feel I've played a small part in that. So
you've brought me out, Jim. I'm no longer this data nerd talking about XG. I'm sat here going, bloody Burnley, get them out.
No, you're right. I hope Palace smash them.
Come on, Palace.
Come on, Palace. Love it.
So, on to Everton against Brighton. And now, I tell you what, I went back through some of the stats on this because you can take the nerd out of the guy, but you can't take the guy out of the nerd. Something like that.
I got that
Now,
same as I got the other one wrong way around. It's fine. It's fine, mate.
it goes one way or the other. But these are always pretty exciting games. There's been at least 5 goals in the last 3 encounters between these two teams. And obviously, Everton won 5-1 in the opposite fixture at the end of last season. But normally away teams win this one. There's not been a home victory since October 2020. And I just think that run's going to continue. Everton clearly will now be looking well above relegation. I think they've turned it around, won 3 of the last 4. But I think Brighton are going to get their mojo back. I think they've had a week off. I think the Europa League sort of routine has hit them really hard. But with a proper week's break from their last game, I do think they'll regroup. And I think ultimately they are a better team than Everton, even if Everton aren't as bad as maybe we'd been hoping.
I think you're right. They're a better team than Everton, but I think the form has been patchy and Everton have turned a corner, as you've said. So it's fairly straightforward in terms of I think Everton will come and put a good performance in. I don't think Brighton will ever roll over. I appreciate that freak of a result against Villa, but other than that, Brighton are a very good side and not easily beaten. So I can see them cancelling each other out, and that's why I've gone for a Desmond.
Nice. I always like a Desmond. It feels like if you're going to predict a draw, a Desmond always feels like the most fun way to do it.
It's going to be a good game. I can't split them, but I think it's going to be good.
Could be a good watch, that. Yeah. Gotta love it. So my next one, I've got some really short notes written down. I've genuinely written, I mean, come on. That's all I've got.
Sure.
I mean, in Manchester City, clearly, you know, I have in the last few weeks raised some doubts about Man City. I think last week in particular, I came into that one after their run they'd had with a few defeats against Wolves, against Arsenal, against Newcastle in the Carabao. I'd started to doubt them a little bit. And then you saw that pivot of Rodri and Stones just utterly dominate against Manchester United to the point where genuinely, I just don't think anybody could have got through them, never mind teams that aren't at that elite level. And it reminded me why Man City are such a juggernaut. And yeah, I mean, it's reconvinced me that they're going to win the league. And I think it's going to start with a very convincing performance here this weekend.
They've had a longer wobble than most would have predicted. I think Rodri coming out of the side was hit them harder than probably they realised. And it's likely woken Pep up to what he needs to do, probably in January, but if not, certainly the summer. I can see your result coming off. I wouldn't normally say that sort of thing because 5-0 is huge. However, I do believe that the gaps between the different levels in the Prem, so you've got your top teams, your elite teams like your Man Cities, and there's your Arsenals and Liverpools trying to creep into that. Then you've got your top to mid-table teams, Chelsea's, Tottenham's, that were going to beat the majority. Aston Villa, Bournemouth are probably in that bottom tier with us. So there is a huge gulf between City and Bournemouth, and we've already seen results like, well, we know just too well, don't we? 5-0. We know there's been results like 8-0. We know there's been.
Don't know what you're talking about, Jim.
There's a 6-1 in there for Villa and Brighton. I'm sure there's been bigger routes that I can't think off the top of my head, but it's not going to be an absolute shocker to see 5-0 City. But Areola's under pressure. He got a win last time out, I believe.
Yes,
again, I'm not that man. They beat Burnley, didn't they? So maybe that's a little bit of adrenaline boosted to the side again, a bit of a kick. They'll certainly not be expecting to turn City over, and I still fancy him to get beat to 0, but maybe a little bit more respectable, shall we say?
Yes. They might hold them out for a little bit longer. I think it's 21 wins in a row at the Etihad for Man City. And I believe that's the Premier League record for most ever consecutive victories by a team at home. So obviously they'll be looking to continue that. I don't think it's going to be Bournemouth that stop them, though. What a story it would be if it was, to be fair. Do you know what we've got to talk about next, Jim? We've got to talk about it. Sheffield United versus Wolves. Now, I'll admit immediately what's happened here. is that I have gone with my heart and not with my head. We need points and we need them so desperately fast. I did do a video on our channel earlier. I think you did one on yours as well, Jim, if you want to check that out as well, about whether or not Heke is the right man to take Sheffield United forward after a terrible start to this season. And clearly, he will be in charge for the game at the weekend. But I think anything other than a win probably means that the axe has got to come down, because after a tough run of fixtures, and there have been some really difficult fixtures in there, this one's winnable at Bramall Lane. And so we really need to go out. We've got to win this one, because if we don't, I just don't know where that first win will come from. And so I've gone completely with my heart. I've fully bought in to say this is the one. And then next week I can do an apology for my I think we should be changing manager video that I've already done. But you obviously have gone with your head, Jim.
Well, I haven't. This is a little bit. It's a confession, isn't it? Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. I have gone for a Sheffield United to get a positive result in every prediction so far, and I have been wrong in every prediction so far in this game. I think we'll get some. I genuinely think we will beat Wolves, and that is how deluded I am, and how so positive or whatever you want to call it. But in terms of predictions, this is me playing the, so every time I say we're going to win, I'll pick up a point. You do me, don't you?
Nice.
So
I'm with you.
I say we're going to get done, that means we're going to win. Yes. So there you go. I'm willing to throw the points away.
Yeah.
So Sheffield United bring home 3 big points. So come on, you red and white wizards. We've got this.
I'm proper into that thought process as well. I love that. Anybody who watched the channel at the back end of last season will know I did exactly the same thing. You know, when Middlesbrough would just come in, I immediately was like, nah, they're going to lose this week. And then they'd win. And I'd be like, well, they're going to lose next week. And I love that is our immediate go-to, is like, well, if we just say they're going to lose, then God will laugh.
Because it's all what we do.
Win. Yeah.
This has a direct bearing on the result.
Yeah.
It does.
It's entirely. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. If the world is a simulation, as some people have suggested, then very clearly it is centered on me. And so it does react to what I say. So, that's how we've got to think about these things.
There you go. Take that one, footballing gods. What are you going to do now?
What are you going to do? Please, just one win. Come on. So up next, after that nice rallying cry for Sheffield United, Newcastle against Arsenal. Now, I do fancy Newcastle here. I mean, I know they've had a couple of bad results in the last week, obviously drawing at Wolves, and they'd lost to Dortmund midweek before that. But they were on a fantastic run of form. Obviously, they've absolutely done Manchester United last night as well. I just think that Newcastle at St. James's Park as well have really got something going. They have lost once this year, but that was that crazy game against Liverpool that, quite frankly, for 70 minutes, it was as complete a performance as Newcastle could have asked for. And then they threw it away in sort of a crazy 20 minutes at the end. But yeah, I fancy him here. I think the crowd's going to be up for it. I think, obviously, Nketiah had a nice weekend last weekend. He was given the freedom of the Emirates to sort of find his time and pick his spots. He's not going to do that against Newcastle. He's not that level of player. And so I think that Newcastle will take advantage of Arsenal, potentially not having that big threat up front, and really go on to him. And I do think they can win this game.
Yeah, you certainly won't put it. Listen, Newcastle, I ain't seen many better than Newcastle and how they turned up at the Lane. I know we were poor, but they were outstanding that day. So I wouldn't ever fully back them to, I don't think they can't compete with the best or anything like that. However, I think Arsenal are the only ones that can try and push City at the moment. And I think they'll feel that themselves. And City have had a bit of a blip. Arsenal need to keep that momentum going. And I don't see Newcastle turning them over. I think it's going to be tight. And I've gone for my second 2-2 of the round. But, my second Desmond 2-2. But I can't split them. I can't split them because I could see it going either way by a goal or two. But I think, in all honesty, they'll cancel each other out in a very entertaining game, probably very open, bit old school Newcastle, if you like. It'd be good to see that. Bit of Keegan style football. And looking forward to this one, to be honest.
Yeah, to be honest, obviously it's on after we get home from the United game, and I think it'll either be a nice game to watch while celebrating or something to take your mind off it all. And so, no, I think this will be a great watch Saturday night. And I also think it's interesting. Obviously, I was just looking through the comments that we've got there, and we've got 2-1 to Arsenal, 2-1 to Newcastle, 2-2. Very clearly, everybody else is split. They all know, and everybody thinks this one is a really tight game. It's hard to pick which way it's going to go. So, yeah, I think that's going to be quite exciting to watch, and I think I will enjoy that one. So, another team that we've taken a little bit of enjoyment out of saying that they're going to lose every week in the last few weeks, and it's nice to see we're continuing. Bit of consistency.
Yeah.
From my perspective, Villa score goals. I talked about this last week. I think it was, I think Villa are the joint top scorers in the division, and they just really enjoy when they get going. They just batter teams. And I do think that Forest are one of those teams that seem to be throwing it away a little bit. Since being 2-0 up against Luton, they've conceded 5 with no reply. And for me, I think Villa are just going to really add on the pressure to that. I think they started the season quite well, which made people think, oh, they're going to be fine. They'll probably be comfortable mid-table. But I'm starting to think maybe not. I don't think they are particularly good. And when you look at their wins, for example, they were a bit lucky against us, really, in the end. And we had it were back when we hardly had a team. As if that's changed.
I agree, mate. I don't think they're that good at all. I think I'd like to see him go 1-0 up from a Morgan Gibbs-White, who's recovering from a serious injury, as we know from Rodri. Hope he's doing well. I wish him all the best.
Every week.
But then Villa, that train's never late, as my dad would say. That train is never late. And then Villa are going to pick them up and play with them like they have been doing most teams, because they are the form team in the league at the minute. I really rate Villa. I think they're a good side. I think they'll push for top 4 this year, and more power to them because they've got the money behind them. I know we're not supposed to like them just because of things that have gone on in the past between the two clubs, but I don't really see them as a rival. I think, fair enough. Decent Premier League side, never caused as many problems. No issues with them. And always love to see Forest lose. So come on, you villains.
The Villa.
The Villa.
Got to enjoy it while we can. We've got to find there's enjoyment. This season, we've got to enjoy it everywhere that we can. And this is one, though, that actually I've not been enjoying, because anybody who watches these videos will know that every week I sit here and I go, I quite like Luton. I think they're better than everybody else. And I predict them to get battered week after week after week. And it's really getting to me. Every week I go, I think I'm going to predict a Luton win this week. And then I look at the fixture and I go, probably lose about 6-0. And it's just not fair to them, because they're a good team. And at some point, they will get a run of favourable, winnable games, and they will take points from those games. I have no doubt about that, because they're that kind of team. And we saw their resilience in coming back against Forest. And that's really positive for them. But, I mean, this is Liverpool. And don't get me wrong, I do think Luton will cause teams issues, but I don't think they'll cause Liverpool any issues. And sorry, lads.
Yeah. Listen, mate, I know you want to try and give Luton a positive spin, and I'm saying I like everything about them. I know they're probably our closest rivals in the division, and we want to do better than them over the season, but they are the little engine that could, aren't they? We aren't being too patronising. Yeah, that's true.
I know. We all know your game.
We love Villa. But Liverpool coming to town, absolutely levels above. I'd be predicting similar if they were coming to Bramall Lane, to be honest. So it's nothing personal against Luton, but they're just going to be too good. They're just going to be too good for Luton. I can't see any other way. Having said that, after we posted these results, Liverpool sort of struggled to get by Bournemouth last night. So it's not always cut and dry, and Luton had a good result against Forest. So maybe there's an outside chance that they run it close. But I can't see anything other than a Liverpool win.
It's funny because you're right. Luton are probably one of our biggest challenges, and clearly we don't want them picking up too many points because they're a team we've got to try and finish above. And yet there would be something so enjoyable about seeing them get points off Liverpool.
Listen, if we go down, I would love nothing more than Luton to stay up and us to go down with Burnley and Forest, because that would, fair play to them. So it's certainly nothing against Luton themselves, but they are clearly our nearest rivals in division, and we've got to hope that we do better than them. So it's just how it is.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, nothing personal in this one, unlike a couple of others that we seem to be coming on more and more. No shame. Why would we? So the final game of the weekend, and we're talking about... So I'm going to pick you up on something you said earlier. You talked about levels in this league, and you talked about the elite teams, and you referenced Man City, you referenced Arsenal, you referenced Liverpool.
Yeah,
you
then
said we've got the upper mid-table teams.
I knew when I was saying it. Spurs. I knew when I was saying it. You're right. Fair cop, Gov.
Yeah. Now,
Spurs should be in that conversation, shouldn't they? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. They've started the season so well. I mean, Ange Ball, it was a meme at first, but all of a sudden it looks like the genuine article. And I just think they've been on such a good run of form. I mean, we are probably sleeping a bit on Chelsea. You know, they're not in bad form themselves. I know it's a terrible, almost pathetic performance that they put in last week when they got done by Brentford. And they threw away the 2-goal lead against Arsenal. But the other way of looking at that is they were 2-0 up against Arsenal, and until a goalkeeping mistake, were very comfortable in that game. Before that, I think they'd won 4 in a row. They are a decent team, and they are getting better as the season goes on. I just don't think they're at the level really for Spurs. I think Spurs at the minute are in that conversation at the top of the league. I don't think they will be. I think you're probably right, and Spurs will... I think they will finish top 4, but I think they will regress and finish below your Arsenals, Liverpool, Man City. But if they win this and if they just keep rolling, it's hard to see a way against them, really, at the minute.
Yeah, to be honest, it were a lazy omission from me that they should have been in that conversation as pushing City, because I'm not convinced they will completely fall away. I wouldn't surprise me at all to see him finish second. I think he's, like you say, it's all about the momentum into it. If they can keep that going, then obviously it's only going one way. I question the squad depth a little bit at Spurs, because the first 11 he's got them playing brilliant, but I don't know how much is underneath. And that's genuinely not knowing, really, rather than saying that they haven't got enough beneath, because I don't know. But I remember doing the preview to when we were coming up to play Spurs, and I didn't have a clue that left back who Doggy was. Well, don't we all know now, because he is top class. So, yeah, they've made some really shrewd signings, like they tend to do. And Angie's getting best out of them. So fair play to them. And like you said, Chelsea are getting better. This isn't going to be a walkover of a game. They've got some absolute quality on the side. If you spend 300 billion or whatever that is, that, you know, level with Forest, I think, in outlay for players, like then, then, you know, they're going to have a good side, aren't they? But it's making them gel, and they will eventually. So, I think Pochettino returning to Spurs as well, which might be an interesting twist. But I know you hadn't considered that, had you? That don't come up in any stats that you're checking before games. So there you go. But I still think Spurs will have just about enough.
I do as well. And that is, I didn't even think about it. Didn't even cross my mind for a moment, that. And clearly that may have some psychological impact. However, it brings us quite nicely into my banker for the weekend, ladies and gentlemen, is Spurs to beat Chelsea at home. I think that Spurs are comfortably the better team. I think Spurs will keep going on their fantastic run. And I don't think there will be any psychological impact of the former very successful manager returning to the club. Because I totally knew about it. Really? And I definitely factored it into all of my decision making. Where are you going for your banker, Jim?
My banker is the Villa to beat Forest comprehensively. Yeah, no danger. Come on, the villains. We're all with you. Team Gabby Agbon Lahore and all that.
Oh, God. Let's not go too far into it.
I didn't feel right.
I didn't like it. I have to admit, I let you choose your banker first this weekend. But I think if it had been me, obviously we've got the agreement that we're not picking Manchester City. And I do think that Villa seemed to be the obvious one to me as well. I think they would have been where I was going. My last man standing's been cancelled for the weekend because of the FA Cup. But if it hadn't been, I probably would have been going for Villa as well. So I do think you've picked quite well there. Now, before we move on, Jim, I know for a fact that you've got some very exciting Football Manager content coming up that I want you to plug for us.
Oh my word, that is a false dawn, if nothing else. But thank you for allowing me to do that. We've got a second channel that we're just sort of piloting, Jimmy Ramble over on here on YouTube, if you like. And we've just sort of rolling out some Football Manager content. So if you follow the Blades Ramble and know that I tend to have a little bit of a dig every now and again when things aren't going our way, well, more fool me, because it turns out I'm a useless football manager as well. So, come and watch me fail and live in misery as I try and guide Sheffield United away from the relegation zone. And currently I'm failing miserably. Spoiler alert, but it's not going very well. So yeah, if you fancy laughing at me a little bit, Jimmy Ramble on YouTube, but obviously the main boy, the Blades Ramble, where we talk all things Sheffield United. So thank you, Ollie. Appreciate that opportunity to plug.
No worries. Anything for Football Manager content. I will plug any Football Manager content every day of the week. I'm currently in the Japanese 3rd division. Apparently, you get a £5 million budget down there, and it's beautiful.
Why does that surprise me? Why does that not surprise me?
You go where the sort of hipster styles are, don't you?
You'll be recommending we sign Taekwondo or something, won't you, from Shanghai Shenhua?
Wait until our January content comes out and you'll hear all about the greatest players from the Japanese 3rd division. A little bit of a spoiler for you all. So if you want to join along next week, if you want to play along with us in the comments, then please go into the YouTube video and put your score predictions in the comments. And our very good friend Shaz will go through and she will pick out your comments. If you want to thank Shaz, she does have her Twitter, which is @ShazbatDesigns, and she is currently taking orders in the run-up to Christmas, but you do have to get your orders in as soon as you can. I myself have ordered the clock from her, and honestly, it is absolutely sick. I bought it for a friend, and I'm going to keep it for myself because it's so good. Honestly,
what a good friend you are.
Got to be done. Thank you very much for joining us this week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me, Jim. Go well, everybody, and we shall see you again pretty soon.
Up the Blades.
Up the Blades. That's what we like to see. Bye, guys.